Welcome into the Show 6 podcast, where we break down the championship series for Pokémon GO. In this episode, we are recapping the 2025 North America International Championships, where over 360 players competed. Championship Sunday was the most competitive it's ever been, and our 2023 World Champion ItsAXN caught every other competitor in his Araquanid's watery web. All of this, plus bracket surprises, upsets, meta shifts in the Delightful Day season, and much, much more. So if you're ready, lock in and good luck. Have fun. Welcome back, everyone, to the Show 6 podcast. I am SpeediestChief2 with the illustrious Zzweilous. ZZ, you had to check an additional bag or something to get back to Germany because you had a lot of hardware to take back with you.
So I actually was really smart because my entire stay in the United States, that was like 1.5 weeks actually. It wasn't just the tournament. I made a whole little vacation out of it, which was absolutely worth it, by the way. But I only checked one large bag, and I could have just taken some of my clothing, some of what I was bringing to the United States in like a little piece of hand luggage. But I decided consciously to leave that at home, so I would have a free piece of hand luggage on the way back, and it actually paid off in a big way.
Nice.
Because yes, you may be able to see it right there. There's a second trophy, and it's a fourth place this time. I kind of only can do even numbers, but maybe I'll leave an odd one for August.
I think we need to get you a trophy case eventually instead of just on top of
Yeah.
the
Like they're
cabinets.
chilling there, but it's not really the most flattering place to have
Mm.
them rot for the end of their days. So yeah, if you are wondering what I'm talking about, there's a YouTube version of this podcast, so you can see that wonderful fourth place trophy next to the second place EUIC trophy.
Wow.
Very proud for sure.
It was really funny, and we're going to get into all the tournament coverage. And I can't wait because there's so much to talk about. But we actually spent some time together at some of the social events, and it was really funny telling the story of how you and I started the podcast together. Because I had at least 2 or 3 people come up and ask me, like, "Hey, I enjoyed the show. How did you meet ZZ? How did this whole thing come to be?" I said, well, I was looking around the community for very smart people, and I noticed that this one trainer in particular was a sports journalist by trade. And I said, well, I want to create a show that's basically like sports journalism for competitive Pokemon Go. So that seemed perfect already, on the face of it. But then we come to find out that ZZ is top cutting tournaments. He's winning events. He's top cutting ICs. He's finishing top 4. He's taking home medals and trophies galore. And I just feel like the smartest investor at this point, right? Because I'm working a lot of the big events. As a commentator, I get to see like a bird's eye view of everything. And I actually competed at NAIC this past weekend, which is a rarity for me, but actually really, really fun. And I enjoyed it a lot. But having arguably someone who's at the upper echelon of commentating, and then obviously someone who's at the upper echelon of competing. I mean, this is just like a perfect blend. And I had a really fun time like telling that story over and over again because it was like I got in, to Uber or Facebook back when it was still, needing seed capital. It's like, yeah, I just made a pretty good investment, asking my co-host to join me. And I'm so glad that you did. Thank you so much.
Honestly, like before I joined the podcast, I was almost doing nothing. Like I did have that Barcelona Special Championship title, that's for sure. So I had that breakout tournament, but there
Yeah.
was a whole lot of duds along the way. And maybe it's because now I actually, this is like doing your homework, right? Like my teacher, Mr. Dunphy, is asking about what I did for NAIC. And yeah, I need to do my homework to actually show up with something. Yeah, I
I,
feel like I've gotten a lot more consistent at a very high level ever since I've started professionally yapping about it all.
Yeah, well, the additional research, comes in handy, and I hope it comes in handy for everyone who's listening to the show as well. Again, lots of fun compliments and notes. PvP Steve was actually very very kind. I spoke with him while we were at a pizza shop, and I hung out with Steve a lot this weekend, which is awesome. He's a wonderful wonderful human. But I talked to him, and he said that our podcast is one of the main things that he consumes on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. He says he checks actively for when the next episode is up because he really really wants to listen to it. So
I think this is
uh
the perfect time to apologize for the lack of a preview episode. I know that we teased
yes.
it and we kind of underdelivered on that by not recording an episode at all, but I think we tend to underestimate how busy those weeks ahead of NIC actually get.
Mhm.
So every time it's cut so close with like 1 week between essentially like the last meta shift to the next IC, and like you have to report on Bologna, you have to get on a plane, you have to fly. You have a lot of social obligations that obviously always come first.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to find the time, but I guess we
Mhm.
will not have the problem for the foreseeable future because there's
Yeah.
only the PJCS and Worlds for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, I had just gotten back from GoFest in New Jersey. I landed on Monday in the afternoon, and then I, basically settled in on Tuesday. And in order for us to record, it would have had to have been Monday land back home, Tuesday relax, Wednesday drive down to New Orleans, rent a studio somewhere, set up all of our recording equipment, get that done, and then Thursday, check into the hotel and get ready to compete on Friday. So it would have been bang bang quick turnaround, and meanwhile everyone else has plans. I know that you were also doing things around the city, so yeah, sorry everyone that we didn't get the NAIC preview done. I'm so glad that ZZ pointed that out because I know everyone looks forward to it. And we kind of agreed. We kind of had like a moment where we looked at each other and we said maybe we should try not to overpromise too much and just kind of make what we can and make it the best product we possibly can.
But we do have a big backlog of episode ideas over the dry spell that would be the summer month. So
Oh yeah.
maybe there is something to come. I do not want to overpromise yet again, but it's looking better. It's looking better.
Yeah, no, to your point, we've got a lot of fun things that we're planning. We're going to try to execute on all those for you. And sorry, we're not going to give you any previews because we don't know what we're going to be able to get done, but just stay tuned because we're going to try some new things if we have the bandwidth, the time, et cetera, et cetera. But ZZ, it's a good time to kind of dive into NAIC. I guess we could start with some meta breakdowns because based on the scrims, right? And I cannot thank Inadequance and the Candle Cult and all the incredible TOs there enough because I joined as many practice tournaments as I could within the 72 hours between landing home and then competing at the tournament. And my goodness, I got a pretty good read on the meta. I had a pretty good idea of what to expect, and there were tons and tons of shifts. My prep was different from yours. We didn't really talk too much, and you were running some wild stuff in practice. And the gist I was getting from you is that you felt very confident, probably by like Wednesday, maybe even Tuesday, you were feeling much, much more confident about your team, and you're kind of doing a practice tournament here or there, but you were like, "Yeah, I feel like I'm ready to go." So, what was your read on the meta coming into NAIC, and do you think that your read was correct?
So that is an interesting and layered question. So the way I prepared was to essentially just throw everything I had in my Pokemon storage at the wall and enter as many practice tournaments as possible. There was one of those where I registered like a Galarian Weezing, a Piloswine, and a Guzzlord on the same team. And honestly, I liked quite a bit about it. Not the Piloswine. The Piloswine came to one singular game. It looked fairly good on paper because it kind of tackles the Dedenne and the Diggersby, which are two of the main threats that emerged from early practice. But it struggles even with Pokemon like Drapion, which you want your ground type to beat typically, and you don't really want to bring it into any team with a water type, which is any team.
Or Scizor,
So
right?
um, that found itself way like on the last place of the bench really soon. I tried out Dragapult, I tried out Ice Fang Hippowdon, and I tried a lot of meta alongside that as well, just to get familiar with which of the more reliable Pokemon would still be good, would still be around. And eventually, I essentially managed to analyze first thing which Pokemon are very common. That is easily done by just looking at usage data that, especially the candle cult.
Candy Cult. It's a new tournament, everyone.
This feels like a trick or treat version. Um, the Candle Cult practice hosts, they tend to compile very useful data when it comes to that. But then also just like my personal experience as to what Pokemon are being brought against me. And one thing that I found myself up against a lot was the Drapion and the Dusclops core, which are
Mm,
two Pokemon that, if we actually look at the usage in day two of NAIC, um, found their place within the top three most used, with
yep.
Dusclops being on almost 72% of teams and
Yep.
Shadow Drapion still at 53%. So over half of the trainers in Top Cut were relying on those two Pokemon. And then there's also like the shift from Mudslappers, specifically Claydol, was very prominent in
Mm,
the Might and Mastery meta, to Diggersby as the main ground type, because
yep.
with the rise of ghosts such as Dusclops and as well bug type fast attack users, the psychic subtyping on Claydol was more and more of a liability, and people shifted to Diggersby to still fill that role.
Mm,
And so it was fairly clear fairly soon that the top three Pokemon to beat would be Dusclops, Diggersby, Shadow Drapion. And one Pokemon that tackles all of those really, really well is Greninja. So I took the Weezing from a very early practice tournament attempt because that thing is a good core breaker against the classic fighting type plus ghost type core.
mm.
We did talk about it in previous episodes where I pointed out the strength of cores like Galarian Corsola and Primeape, for
Oh
example.
yeah.
And if you have Brutal Swing on your Galarian Weezing, you are actually able to break that core apart fairly well. But Weezing does fear Diggersby. Weezing does fear the spamminess of Shadow Drapion, especially if you don't have a
Yep.
neutral uh, charge attack like Overheat or Play Rough. So one Pokemon that covers Weezing really, really well was the Greninja. So those two were yeah, they were on the team fairly early. I did try to round the team out with some bulk. One thing that I definitely wanted to be prepared for is Dedenne, the fourth most used Pokemon in day two at 46.9%. Nice. So I brought Credilli with Acid as its new fast attack, which gives it a lot more neutral play and farm down potential than with the previously lackluster Bullet Seed.
Mm,
So that was pretty much guaranteed to be on the team. Then I decided that Lapras looked really good because
mhm.
most Dusclops don't get the bulk point against Lapras's Psywave, and because it's a one-turn fast attack, you can essentially just shred through the low HP but high defense Pokemon Dusclops. Again, Lapras wins against Diggersby. Lapras even beats the Shadow Drapion, again because of a fast attack breakpoint.
Mhm.
And it also functions as a Pokemon that can draw out the fighting type for Greninja to shine. So
Yep.
those four were essentially guaranteed to be on the team. But I was still like a little soft-ish to Dedenne. I really wanted to have play against Dedenne because I don't like how a lot of Pokemon that were previously really strong in the meta, like Azumarill, were just shut down by the relentless boosting with parabolic charge. And a Pokemon that I personally considered really, really neutral, and that was also really well protected by my two water types because it only has one type weakness, was Shadow Scizor. Shadow
Mm,
Scizor is underrated on PvPoke because PvPoke rankings only really account for the 0 and the 1 shield scenario, whereas Shadow Scizor is a Pokemon that you like to play in the 2 shield scenario
yep.
because it is very frail, it can't really take a charge attack, but Shadow Bullet Punches after the Bullet Punch buff with the option to boost, either guaranteed through Jailbreak or if you like to live a little more risky with Night Slash, can just give you very, very strong two shield matchups, even against Pokemon like Mandibuzz that
Mhm.
should typically wall all your charge attacks. So that was also another Pokemon that I really wanted to try out. And in practice, I found that Greninja and Shadow Scizor worked super well even on the same team, because even though Greninja doesn't really live a lot of moves, um, with its resistance profile, it does live the charge attacks of the very common Drapion, Dusclops, and the low attack Digger speed quite well. So I could still save my shields for Scizor. And yeah, it's my very last Pokemon because I felt fairly well prepared for opposing Diggersby. I did opt for the um, Galarian Corsola. That used to be a Runerigus, but more on Runerigus later. I did swap that out because I didn't want to be too weak to Shadow Quagsire, which I know some
Yeah.
top players were using.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is how I arrived at my team of six. And I have to say, the team comp was not at fault for me not winning at all. And coming fourth is still something that I'm really, really proud of. So yeah, did I make the correct meta read? I have been rambling on for 5 minutes, but the short answer is yes, absolutely.
You call it rambling, but I honestly think there's so much to unpack from what you said. Very interesting that you first started this whole setup with the Galarian Weezing. That's like, honestly, looking at your team, that's probably like the last Pokemon I expect you to put on there. You're like, well, I need an answer for fighting types because not only am I weak to Annihilate in the form of Cradily, Greninja, to a 2 degree Scizor, depending on the shield scenario and the energy scenario, and also a little bit soft to with Lappers. I need an Annihilate answer. Let me lock in Galarian Weezing. You're like, no, let me put Galarian Weezing first. But I
Yes.
just have to call you out on one of the crazier points that I just heard. There was a lot of chatter in the crowd, not only for your team, but also for Potaman's team. And that was because of the Greninja Shadow Scizor duo. And a lot of people sitting around me in the bleachers or in the stands or chairs, whatever, in the crowd, we were wondering, is it possible to bring both Greninja and Shadow Scizor on a team with only 2 Protect Shields? It feels like both those Pokemon need Protect Shields. And you just said the most bonkers thing that I think I've heard in this regard. You said, yeah, well, like if I brought both of them, I could just save my shields for Shadow Scizor. What? You're not shielding Greninja? Wait, really? I'm sure everyone that was listening, their ears kind of perked up. They're like, wait, what is he talking about? Is it because of the typing? Is it because this Pokemon, like, the damage calculations very well and bug was relatively rare, and as long as you could avoid the electric type matchup versus like a Dedenne, you were in good shape? Is that the reason that Greninja suddenly didn't need shields?
So it obviously always depends on what team you're going up against. Like there are some teams where okay, they only have one Scizor answer, and that's a Diggersby, which isn't even that bad of a matchup. As long as you like catch a move or get a shield advantage somewhere.
Or shield the fire punch?
So like sometimes you knew like there was a matchup against Adib Khan that I did play on the loser side of day two on like at the tables where
Mhm.
Greninja was 6-0 in the two shield scenario. Like I knew that I could just rely on Greninja and I didn't actually need the scissor as much. Um, so
Wow.
there were always those matchups where I knew, like, okay, I can really go all in on this one win condition, on this one trump card. Whereas other matchups, like those two core breakers, were almost my safest Pokemon because, yes, they don't have a lot of bulk, barely any bulk, in fact. But sometimes, if both of those very aggressive Pokemon just beat like 4 out of 6 and also have perfect synergy, it can make sense to bring them together because a lot
Mm,
of people will still want to account for all your 6 Pokemon that you have on your team and then have to bring, for example, a Shadow Drapion because maybe that is their one response to a Galarian Corsola. And if you have
sure.
a Shadow Drapion against your Greninja, you can confidently no shield a Crunch and even another Aqua Tail if you really like to live dangerously. So
Like
I
Austin
feel like
Powers.
with what was popular in the meta, um, ghost type damage, ice type damage, water type damage, dark type damage, all of that is resisted by Greninja. So while some matchups I did like to save shields for it, in others it just didn't need them.
Hmm. That's so fascinating to hear, and yeah, I agree with you. I think that a lot of the offensive pressure Greninja in spite of its lack of bulk, its typing just made it such a unique niche pick. I'm looking here at the top 24 teams from DracoViz. I don't see Galarian Weezing on a single other team in this top 24. I believe that's correct. I've looked over this list like 3 times, and I do not see the Galarian Chimney Pokemon anywhere besides your team. And then the two
It's
Greninjas with
very much unique to the top cut, yeah.
with you and Potaman, both with the Greninjas. And I think there might be one sprinkled somewhere else in here. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that both of our European trainers, to take it the furthest, were both running a similar core. And then there are a few other similarities as well, mainly the Acid Cradily and then the fairy type Pokemon in Azumarill and Galarian Weezing. There were some broader meta trends that I wanted to just highlight with this shift from the previous season to Delightful Days. I'm just going to throw out some facts here real quick. So Bologna was the last event before the meta shift, right? I just want to list some of these Pokemon that were very popular and that were basically nowhere to be seen at NAIC, just to give people an idea of the scale of the meta shift in case you weren't actually watching the event. So in Bologna, 6 teams out of the top 8 had a Tinkaton. In NAIC, only 4 of the top 24 teams had a Tinkaton. In Bologna, 4 of the top 8 teams had a Corviknight. There were 0 Corviknight in top 24 at NAIC. And Bologna, this is the most obvious one, right? Because with this Delightful Days update, we got a lot of buffs to bug types. In Bologna, 11 of the top 16 players had Malamar, and 6 of those 11 were Shadow, right? If you look towards NAIC, there were 0 Malamar in top cut in the top 24 period. 5 of the top 8 teams in Bologna had Azumarill, and 9 out of 16 overall had Azumarill. And then there were 3 Azumarill in the top 24 of NAIC. This is a big one too. In Bologna, 10 out of the top 16 teams had Jumpluff. 9 out of those 10 were Shadow. There was 1 Jumpluff in the top 24 at NAIC that was piloted by Toad343, and it was a Shadow Jumpluff. So I think I'm trying to like zoom out a little bit, because as you know, competitors, commentators, we are in this all the time. We're looking at these meta shifts all the time. We're doing the show about it. We're commentating, competing, whatever. We are very much with our finger on the pulse, so to speak, of this meta game. I think this is like a moving target that a lot of more casual trainers probably have no idea how to anticipate, how to prepare for, what to do when these things are happening. Because let's say, like, oh, I live in Louisiana and I kind of dabble in PvP a little bit. Let me look at the Bologna results and see what team I should lock in for NAIC this weekend. And if you did that, you would be so far behind, it wouldn't even be funny, right? You'd be so far behind. And for all of my searching over the internet and through the community, I really feel at this point that Inadequates and his Candle Cult tournaments, his meta usage charts, his victorious team graphics that he posts, I feel like that's like the only guide that we have for casual players who are not in these servers scrimming. They're not in ORAC. They're not in the Candle Cult. They're not in the weeds, so to speak. And I feel like we need more resources, because this is just such a drastic change from one week to the next due to one meta update. I mean, what do you think? Do you think we need more resources for casual players, or should we just not worry about this?
I think we always can use more resources. The question is how those resources would look like. Are you
Mm.
thinking just like an easily accessible way of practicing yourself, or an easily digestible way of accessing practice tournament results, and maybe just like plugging something more immediately accessible into the Candle Cult results, essentially.
So I guess what I have in mind is 2 things. First is more people running practice tournaments, whether it's my server in GBLA or whether it's somebody else's server. We need more of these practice tournaments, and we need to share these winning teams more often. Just get them out on more channels. And the second thing is maybe like a video guide to a new season, because here's the thing: in a lot of our competitive servers, everyone is working through the meta. They're trying to scheme about what to bring. And especially if you're competing, you don't want to actively share your trade secrets like a week before the tournament or 3 days before the tournament. So there's like this barrier where a lot of top trainers just don't even want to talk about it. Famously, this weekend there was an example regarding Axon's Araquanid. And I believe Axon was not the only one to play it. I believe Dunebug also played Araquanid. But one of my friends, I won't name them for the show. One of my friends was like kind of frustrated. They were like, "Man, Legends United and Dunebug and Axon are just totally gatekeeping the Araquanid, and they're not telling anyone about it. They're not talking about the breakpoints. They wouldn't even scrim with me before the tournament. They only scrim with their own teammates. Like, what is this wild gatekeeping maneuver? I mean, who are we? Tea and pizza? You know what's going on?"
Yeah, yeah. I was about to say there's a copy pasta for that. But
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
So like obviously, I feel like this should be the case in a way that top players who have a great and unique meta read, like they shouldn't just be expected to put that out there for everybody to consume, copy, and prepare for.
Hmm.
So in that way, I really liked what NAIC had to offer because we have a lot of interesting and unique takes on the meta, really succeeding in their own way, be it the Araquanid, which obviously took it all, be it the Shadow Seizoku Ninja Corps, be
Hmm.
it the Runerigus on Arceus Aurelius team. There's a Tentacruel in Top Cut, there's a Pangoro in
Yep.
Top Cut, there's an Alolan Ninetales in Top Cut, there's a Cantonian Ninetales in Top Cut. There were a lot of very unique and unusual picks that people probably wouldn't have predicted to rise up, and I think that's kind of fun. That's kind of cool, and I am okay with those staying secret, but I still like the idea of, I don't know, like just like maybe compiling show six usage in a more public place. I don't know whether there's like um maybe you integrate it into Dracoviz, maybe you integrate it into PvPoke, just like one of those big sites that
Hmm.
if you're like even a casual PvPer, you will probably have heard of. Um,
Yeah.
because I like the idea of having a centralized hub where everybody can just go and find what they're looking for. And with practice tournaments, this is still very much relegated to Discord servers, which is like one layer of accessibility removed from just finding it on social media or clicking on that site that you always go to for all your PvP needs. You
Hmm.
have to become a member of a community. You have to then sign up on another site. Like there's
Yep.
always like it always comes with strings attached to a degree. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, if you follow the right people, if you follow the right influencers, so to speak, you will find some info. But it's not really as if we have that one central place. And another thing that um, is, I know, is important to you as well as to me, is that I think we need to have that show six option integrated into the game sooner rather than later. I'm
Yes,
not really
please.
holding my breath for it to happen super soon, but if Scopely is listening to this, yeah, if we just were able to do like whole remote competitions that emulate the official circuit. I know that VGC is able to do that a lot of the time, and even is able to award championship points for it. And we don't
Hmm.
even have the infrastructure to play the show six mode that is so instrumental for how this game functions on a competitive level. Um,
Yep.
I feel like we need the infrastructure both on a grassroots level, but also in a way just in game. Because right now it's really like, okay, do you know the right people? Do you know the right places? And obviously, like I think we have a very welcoming community. It's not too difficult to find people to link up with, and a lot of big creators in the PvP sphere have a lot of the community dedicated to play Pokemon and the championship series. But still, I wish it was a little more out in the open, a little more immediately accessible for sure.
Something that's fascinating to me is actually the content creation journey of Cybertron and Wolf, right? If you look at VGC, obviously the game has been going on for many, many years, especially in the competitive sphere. And Go is still, very, very new. I really I actually need to kind of sit down and maybe chat with one or both of them at some point. I need to figure out like how this growth happened from VGC being this incredibly difficult thing to gain and to gain access to competitively, because you have to find the right Pokemon, you have to train them up, you have to do all these other things, and you have to scrim, and you have to figure out the stats you want, and the gameplay itself is like very very intricate, very detailed. It's I mean, it's wildly more complicated than Go. Let's just be honest, right? It's Go is mostly counting, energy management, damage calculations, predictions, that kind of thing. But setting up terrain, turn speeds, everything else that goes into VG is so complex. So seeing those creators actually establish enormous bases of viewership, and I'm sure a lot of people, like for the example I just gave, I'm sure if you're a VG competitor and you want to play in a certain regulation, you go online, you look up Aaron's videos, you look up Wolf's videos, and you can build a team based on the video or the information you learn from those videos. So I don't know. I don't think Go is there yet, but I do think there is
Yeah.
potential to get there. And like you said, adding Show 6 to the game would be a huge benefit to that. There's an interview. I'll just read through this really briefly.
Hmm.
There's an interview with Chris Brown, who is our esports director for Pokemon. He's been with TPCI for 12 years, and he's really seen kind of the growth of everything over time. And with the news that Scopely officially acquired Pokemon Go, and they are taking ownership of the team and everything else, I thought this answer, excuse me, was very very interesting. So I'll just read through it really quickly. The question is about do you work with developers to better enhance the player experience? And Chris Brown says, yes. With Game Freak, it's a long development cycle. They solicit what we'd like to do in tournaments almost 2+ years ahead of the game. I'd say an example of some of the things that they've done in the past would be accessibility things like rental teams, obviously, but also the World's finals often have a special stage just for the finals with its own custom music. Imagine if Scopely did that for Go, right? So the game developers really care about the community and those competitions to take the time to sort of build this stuff. Pokemon Unite has a tournament mode built into the game product that all players are able to access and play in our online tournaments. When they do that, all the licenses are unlocked so that all players can play on equal footing. He continues, we're constantly talking with the game developers, and they're looking at, what our needs are to put on a great tournament. Pokemon Unite has another example where they built a LAN mode just for these live events in order to make that player experience more seamless, because removing latency makes for a better player experience. These things take time and energy from the game developer side, and we're very fortunate that we've got a great link between our events and our esports teams when talking with them. So when you hear that and you hear that these innovations and these kind of like agreements have been made for the other titles, it really begs the question, why not us? Why not Go? Why can't we get a Show 6 tournament mode in the game? Why can't we get a potential LAN connection at these events, so that, like me, I wasn't waiting for an hour for my GPS error to debug itself
Oh
so I could actually
yes,
play my games? Like, why
been there,
not?
done that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like we all have, and it's just unfair.
I think so. One thing that always irks me to a degree is that I feel a lot of the reason why there's no new features being rolled out, or maybe our content creation isn't yet as ambitious as it is for other titles. Um, yeah, I feel like a lot of that seems to have to do with us just being a smaller game, and there's
Mm,
just less players that would appreciate something like that. But I honestly just look at this as the best way of growing the scene. And I think a lot of what um, what happened to VGC has directly has to do with the videos that people like Wolf Glick are putting out. And it's not only Wolfie, it's a lot of medium to small sized creators who
true.
just produce very digestible, not super cookie cutter, this is the GBL team for the week type of content. And honestly, like I can't fault any um Go creator for doing what works best for them, because everybody is putting a lot of work and effort into that and wants to just see it work out for themselves as well as possible.
Mhm.
But I still always think about what you could do if you were to just study what works for other titles and then blatantly copy everything that works really well, but give it a Go twist. I think that is possible. I think there is a lot of potential out there. And I've seen people do it in the past. Like one creator that comes to mind, NAIC top cutter Arceus Aurelius, who I don't know, was that 2 years ago? Was that 2023 even? Like he
Yeah.
had like a brief stint of narrativizing Pokemon Go content a little more, be it talking
Yep.
about top competitors going into worlds or what makes a certain Pokemon strong. And even though that may not have immediately taken off, I thought that was super refreshing.
Me
And I
too.
think there is potential for this to pop off in the long run. But it's a niche that isn't really filled out just yet for Pokemon Go. And again, this is not meant to be an attack on any one creator who um, has their own way of setting priorities that make sense to them. But me, as somebody who is very lazy, I'm not very lazy, I'm just very busy. But like, I get to sit here and yap about what I would like to see. And this is
Yeah.
what I would like to see. This is like the content that I would consume. Like, I find myself consuming more VGC content on YouTube than Pokemon Go content because it's catering to this competitive audience a little more
Yeah.
and in an interesting and entertaining way. Like, I think we have a lot of good teachers in the community, a lot of people that are good at not only showcasing excellent gameplay but also talking through it. But I don't think we have that many uh this is not meant derogatory, but influencer types, like
Yeah.
people who you would return to their channel because of how interesting they make their content. In a way, like, you come back to them because they're really good, they're really educational. They may have great Go Battle League teams that you want to use for yourself, or they may showcase your Go Battle League teams because you can submit the battles to them, and then that's valuable content. But I
Yeah.
still feel as if there's another layer that we can still unlock as a community, and I don't know who will fill that void or if that void is going to be filled, but I think it exists. And I'm really hoping that there will be somebody who goes viral with Pokemon Go PvP content, because I do believe that especially like in this day and age, there's like, even in the world of chess, like, this is a tangent, but people are talking about how the Gotham Chess YouTube channel is like the third most influential figure in competitive chess, or at least the online community, when it
Yeah.
comes to growing the scene on like a casual first level. And yeah, just to be that figure, I don't know whether we have that yet, but I think we could really use it.
Yeah. I think you're right. And it a lot of it comes down to player awareness, right? I mean, only a fraction of players know about the championship series. Many more players know about Go Battle League, obviously because it's in the game itself. And again, introducing a show 6 mode just absolutely opens the floodgates, hopefully, to more players joining into the competitive circuit. I also wanted to shout out to Zzweilous as well. He published a video about a month ago. It's titled "How the Worst Pokemon Typing Became Champions," and it's about bug types. And on his thumbnail is a Glycopod. So yeah, Zionic did a really good job with that video. It was over 30 days ago now, so I hope he makes another one very soon. But that kind of storytelling and editing was very, very good, and I wanted to encourage him as well. And yeah, I agree. A lot of the players that make the Go Battle League content, I don't fault them at all. If anything, I actively admire them for braving the seas through the bad seasons, the down seasons, the buggy seasons, everything else. They've continued to make content. You know, folks like Jonkus or Henry or any of the other ones. They continue rise. They continue to make incredible videos over time, and there's like a formula to it. But I feel like that formula also needs to evolve, just like every other form of content. Things need to improve and get better in order to hold attention and to grow and to reach new audiences, right? So I think everyone listening probably agrees with that. So hopefully we get that, and hopefully, to come back to our previous point, now that Scopely is assuming more ownership and they have more direct ties to esport activities, hopefully they see that potential. Because again, Scopely, if you're listening, Competitive Pokemon is a rocket ship. If you go to Chris Brown's profile and you scroll through there for more than a minute, you'll see the player numbers like a hockey stick shooting way up. You'll see the viewership shooting way up. You'll see all the metrics that he posts on his page. And honestly, if you want to get in on this rocket ship, you got to start somewhere. And if Pokemon Go is your gateway into it, we're welcoming you with open arms. Please, our Scopely overlords, please help us to get
we're
more
like a
competitive.
year away, maybe like a year and a half away from Generation 10, from a Pokemon anniversary, from a huge year for the franchise. And
Yep.
if one was able to actually get this competitive game mode implemented right now, I think we could just ride that wave, that tide that lifts all boats when there's just like this general Pokemon craze that will benefit
Yep.
all the titles. And yeah, I would hate to see us be late for that, but there's still time. There is still time.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize to everyone as well. One point that I've kind of had discussions about with friends over the past couple of years. Something we need to understand about Pokemon Go is that as far as competitive, it's not going anywhere because of Pokemon's PVE leverage. And what I mean by that is you can pick up a Nintendo Switch or Switch 2 and you can play Scarlet Violet, you can play Z to A. But that's for a lot of the primary Pokemon fans, right? Who are either getting their sixth or seventh title and they just love VG, or they're younger and they're getting a game as a Christmas gift or whatever it might be. And then there's the trading card game where you can essentially walk into a Walmart or a hobby store and you can buy cards and you can trade them, you can sell them, you can do whatever. But everyone, especially in the US and EU, and I think in most areas of the world at this point, almost everyone has a mobile device. And Pokemon Go is basically like an invaluable asset of the Pokemon brand at this point because it is a gateway more so than walking through a Walmart checkout lane and buying a pack of cards, more so than buying a Nintendo Switch and downloading or buying a game or downloading a game. More so than that, you can download it for free. You can play anytime. It's a massive gateway to the brand. So the value in Pokemon Go doesn't appear to be on the competitive side right now, but the PVE side is enormous, and we found that out with the GoFest stream in New Jersey as well. I won't share all of the metrics, but I will say I don't know if I told you this yet, CC, but that GoFest stream in New Jersey was the second most viewed Pokemon stream of all time, behind EUIC Grand Finals of last year for VG. We had over
Oh,
5.5 million people come to that stream at some point. So
that is insane. Yeah, I was like about to ask, do you mean Pokemon or do you mean Pokemon Go? But you do mean Pokemon apparently.
yeah,
And I did see that the drops attracted a lot of folks and attracted a lot of folks to non-event streams as well if drops were
yeah,
enabled. So I think that was a nice way to incentivize just even passive participation is better than no participation. And it
yeah.
also showcases just like this untapped base of players that does exist out there that we could interest for the championship series.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if we have a PVE stream and 100 people subscribe, just for example's sake, and then they all get a notification for the next regional tournament that comes up, and then 50 of those people tune into that, or maybe 30 or so tune into that stream, and then 10 of those people sign up to compete next season. If you scale that out by 5.5 million, who just watched the GoFest stream, there is growth potential, and it's all about widening the top of the funnel. ZZ, I just noticed we've been yapping for 40 minutes and we're still talking about like
This is true.
accessibility.
Have we managed yet? Have we mentioned yet who even won NAIC? I don't even know whether we
I
did.
I think
Uh,
briefly in the intro, we might have been
that
mentioned.
could have happened. That could have
Let's
happened.
let's do this real quick if you don't mind. If you're okay with this, let's talk about some of the upsets, some of the people that did not win that we thought had a good shot to do it. I've got four trainers in mind. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, let's punch down.
All right. Upsets. Let's start low and we'll build up. We'll build up from here. Some trainers that you always see on a bracket and you just assume this trainer has what it takes to go all the way. Out of pocket. Knocked to loser's side bracket in his round one. After he got a bye round one, he competed round two. Knocked to the loser's side by Yu Pancho. And I just want to tell everyone that Yu Pancho's team included Dragalge, Wigglytuff, and Gastrodon. and he knocked Pocket down to the loser's side bracket. Pocket then lost 1-2 to Bopper, who was playing Shadow Scizor and Shadow Primeape. So Pocket, not the tournament experience he was expecting, especially after having such an incredible run last year. Wadaj, another North American trainer, knocked to losers bracket round 2 by someone named Daje FH. Daje FH's team was pretty standard Dedenne and regular Scizor. Wadaj was then eliminated from NAIC by EU Uden in round 4 of the loser side bracket. Uden had a pretty standard Mandiba Shadow Quagsire core. Let's move on to LNDS Harjef, arguably the best trainer in LATAM. Round 3 loss to someone named Matcha 1984. Matcha's team included Jellison and Alolan Sandslash. Harjef was then eliminated by Dr. Roast Beef in losers round 5 of the tournament. And now for the Whopper. Colin 6, sent to the loser side bracket in the round 3 of the NAIC. He had a bye, a no-show, and then a loss. That was his record for the first 3 rounds. He was knocked down by Garbage Baby PAL. I don't even know where to start with that, but let's talk about the teams, EZ. Garbage Baby Pal's team had Tentacruel, Corviknight, and Fletchinder. Not Talonflame. Not Talonflame.
Ember got buffed.
Ember is strong now. Fletchinder took down the final boss. What? However, Colin did bounce back. He won 5 rounds straight for day 2, but then eventually succumbed to Arceus Aurelius in round 1 of day 2. But still, if you're Colin 6, if you are him and you're walking in feeling like the final boss and you go up against a Fletchinder in round 3 after getting a bye and a no-show and you lose, my goodness, that is just something you can't prepare for.
I really hope that none of these trainers are taking these tough runs too hard too much, because I feel as if the way you just laid out the variety of teams that those battlers had to face, this is very much a early meta tough team comp syndrome, where you may have prepared for something entirely different, and then another person had a different type of meta read that really took you by surprise. And I have to say, my day 1 run wasn't much different either. Like, I managed to stay alive, but I had to go up against a Shadow Samurott. I had to go up against a Shadow Blastoise. I had to go up against a Tentacruel. And in 3 of my first 4 rounds, I did drop a game and was essentially back to the wall already. So it was definitely tough times. But yeah, I feel as if my team offered me enough neutral play to at least bounce back in game 3 every time. But yeah, certainly an NAIC of a lot of upsets. And I feel like that has been a theme in previous ICs as well, where there's always been like a handful of trainers that we could easily see win it all, that get eliminated fairly early. And honestly, if anybody this past weekend had a run that they're not happy with, this is proof that it can happen to anybody. Like, nobody is ever safe, no matter what their accolades are, because all of those trainers that you just mentioned, I think there's no doubt about that. They are belonging up there in the conversation of like who's the best players that we have on the planet.
Yeah. It also highlights that our game is, I would say, more front loaded with pressure on team prediction than any of the other titles. And I feel like, again, if you just lock in Shadow Scizor as your 3rd Pokemon and your opponent locks in Fletchinder, there's just no win con. There's like no way to come back from it. No matter if you have played a million battles and you have all the experience in the world, there's just no way once those 2 Pokemon are aligned that you can even do anything, right? It's just kind of hopeless. So yeah, I agree with you. And I think that it's interesting too, because if you look at regional competitions, people only go to regionals when they're going there to compete, right? They know, oh, you aren't going to fly to Fort Wayne, Indiana, or someplace like Peoria unless you are going there with the hopes of getting points and defeating your opponents. But the net, so to speak, is cast a whole lot wider at ICs because a lot of people are coming there for the Pokemon Center. They're coming there for, to watch the shows. They're coming there for the city itself, whether it's London or whether it's Sao Paulo or New Orleans. They're coming there for the experience, and you get a wider variety of things. So I agree with you. I think that the best players are able to handle the curveballs and take care of business, and they're also able to win those hotly contested matches. And unfortunately for the trainers we mentioned, not the best NAIC run, but I fully expect all of them to absolutely crush at Worlds. And yeah, I hope it doesn't get them down, as you said, because we need them in tip top form, because we want to see them succeed, and I believe that they deserve it. So, and also shout out to the trainers that beat them. I mean, you must be walking on cloud nine when you take down, Hard Jeff, and you're like, man, I just beat the LAIC champ, one of the goats of the game itself. I mean, that must feel amazing. So shout out to those players. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely do want to stress that too, that just because your opponent is well known and your team may look a little funky on first sight, doesn't mean that like you got lucky with the team comp. It's always a big achievement to take down somebody like that, because
Mhm.
there's a bunch of trainers that have a good team comp into a top competitor and don't manage to take them down. So
Yeah.
definitely shout outs to everybody who managed to take down a giant of the game.
Hmm. I agree. I agree. There were a couple of bracket surprises I wanted to shout out to. The first is Septile Ice, and if we were to hypothetically do a Worlds preview, and we were to hypothetically look at the list of top performers in NA, this trainer is also on that list. Also, really, really a pleasant surprise. He started out the day as the number 2 seed in Group E. He had a no-show round one. He took down CO is a beast. Talked with CO in the venue. He said they were very close games. Took down Dr. Roast Beef, and then They Love Jai. Dr. Roast Beef would later bring down Hard Jeff, as we said, and then Jai would defeat Dr. Roast Beef. So kind of funny how those things connect. Day two, Septile lost to Teddy Bear to start, and then he beat Dilap, Arceus Aurelius, Alpha Phoebe, and was stopped by yours truly, Zzweilous. So Septile Ice was popping off. And Septile, I think the key to your success, if you're listening, was not playing Mantine. Don't play that Pokemon.
I actually like the evening before the tournament, I had a dinner with a bunch of friends and teammates, and my teammate Ben Cheese Curl.
Mhm.
We were talking about okay, these trainers are already signed up on Arcanine. Let's go through some notable names and predict how far they could go.
Okay.
And on Septile, we were both in agreement that they had a fantastic season. And Ben went so far as to say that he could even imagine Septile taking home a trophy. And he came very close. He did come very close. So certainly one of the rising stars in the North American scene this season.
Yeah. Our only Tinkaton in the top 8 was Septile Ice. So maybe he knows something we don't. Second trainer I wanted to shout out to was Battle Bill. He loses round 1 0-2, but then he heats up with a really, really nice loser side bracket run. He defeated Alan News, had a no show in the following round, 2-1 Blepnir, 2-1 Rogue Leader, 2-1 Arrow, 2-0 PDX Dragon, and then 2-1 Tomahawk. In day 2, though, I believe that he defeated They Love Jai, but then was defeated by Ashton Ash himself. So Battle Bill with a very, very impressive run as well. I mean, don't sleep on Bill. I think we'll talk about him a lot this episode.
Yeah, certainly one of those trainers who sometimes get maybe a little bit of a worse rep than they deserve. I looked at Bill's previous accomplishments in recent tournaments, and there's like a lot of 17th places, and 17th places always tell me that this trainer is like one lucky break away from getting that top cut and getting like maybe even into the prize money and getting a lot of championship points. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's always great when your little breakout happens on the international stage, right? Because yeah, obviously everything's just a little bit larger, and not everybody can say with themselves that they have top cut in IC. So big shout outs to Bill. And yeah, I guess like we have a couple of topics lined up for after the battle aspect. So maybe we'll get back to him later.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. Was there anyone that you wanted to shout out? There were a few surprises to me in our top cut. For example, I thought that RGR was very impressive. I thought that Toad 434 was very impressive. I think I called him Toad 343 earlier, but it's actually 434. Sorry about that, Toad. We had some pretty impressive players and a nice mix of regions as well. Rocha Babyface from LATAM, Lyle Jess from Canada. We had so many other trainers from other countries as well in
Yeah.
our top cut. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyone jump out to you?
21 North Americans, 5 Europeans, 5 players that represent the LATAM region, and then They Love Jai as the Oceanian top cutter. So really a very nice balance. And um, some trainers that stand out to me, like one of them would be the Masked Asian, who is
Mm,
of Elite TM's fame, a constant top leaderboarder, but also somebody who is not able to travel to those play Pokemon events a lot or at all even.
mm,
But he's lucky enough to have NAIC as a sort of local event. And I feel like the last time we really saw the Masked Asian was also at NAIC, making a pretty notable run. And again,
mm,
top cutting, I think in shared 17th place.
mm,
So that was really like taking the one opportunity that you do have and making the most of it. And I feel like the run that I personally found the most noteworthy outside of obviously our 3 on Championship Sunday was actually fifth place Tiwastel
yeah.
because I feel as if Tiwastel is also in that category of sometimes doesn't really get as much credit. I do remember the Cloudsire controversy where a lot of people were piling up against him and were telling him to essentially shut up with his takes on competitive
Yeah.
Pokemon. And I know that Tiwastel was like heading into the tournament, just trying to get the points to qualify for Worlds because he definitely needed a good run to make that happen still. And then he essentially came within one set from just qualifying directly as a top 4 competitor and like was so close to even getting a trophy, which is probably
Hmm.
not something that he had envisioned heading into the tournament. But yeah, like top 5 at the biggest North American event of the season, like that is something to be really, really proud of. And one of my favorite moments of the weekend as well, even though I probably wouldn't have done the same, but Ramberto against Tiwastel, there was a moment where Ramberto actually conceded a match that he did
Mm.
have won, but he won it because of what we call the damage registration error, previously known as the new mechanic. Is it an error? Is it a mechanic? We don't know. Um, but it is when you get your charge attack off the turn that you would typically feint from the fast attack damage your opponent deals to you.
Hmm.
And there is like not enough clarity around whether this is an intended or an unintended way of the game playing out. What we do know is that it is not rematchable. It is ruled as state of the game. So if Ramberto would have decided to take that win, he could have taken that win. And nobody would have even questioned it because that's just how we have been doing it in Pokemon Go. But Ramberto actually decided that going up against his teammate Tiwastel, he
Mm.
was not going to take that victory and instead awarded the point to Astel. And I think that is like, especially with so much on the line, this is a applaudable display of sportsmanship that again, like maybe it would have been different if it was me against a teammate, but if that was me against any random opponent, I would have just counted my blessings, been happy that I got this lucky, and taken the win. So this was definitely not something that would have been expected from any random competitor.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize as well that it's not the player's responsibility to give these kinds of things away. My memory calls back to Wadaj versus Arrow. I remember there was uh, a error in the game on stage. I think it was another example of DRE, like early on the season, and Wadaj ended up taking the win and just did not. Give the same kind of gesture that Berto gave to Twastel. So I hate that our players are in that position where they have to like Rise in the grand finals versus Haydonis, had to give Haydonis back a turn because he got the one turn upon entry, or Berto having to concede that DRE had a factor in effect in the game. I hate that our players are in this position where they have to decide this, but I just want to emphasize to everyone watching at home, if you're trying to paint the story of someone as a hero or as a villain, it's not their responsibility to choose either way. They work within the rules and the framework that's established. And what Berto did was incredibly kind, and I do think that he deserves a lot of praise for that. He's a really nice guy. Berto and I bonded a little bit over the weekend about our mutual love for coffee, and I think it was like we were both seduced by the 2 p.m. iced coffee on Sunday. So the forbidden iced coffee, I should say, because if for a lot of us, if you drink coffee that late in the day, you end up staying up late at night. But whatever, it was a pretty hectic weekend. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Berto was really impressive. I thought Tostel was incredibly impressive. Like you said, top 5 at NAIC was insane. My competitive history with Tostel goes back quite a ways. I remember playing him in the grand finals of the Tampa regionals in order to qualify for continentals back in Sylph 2021. Tostel was my opponent in the grand finals of that tournament. So that was definitely an interesting moment. And then Paul, aka the Masked Asian, it was so funny because I was like scrimming with Paul, talking with him before the tournament started, and he's just such an easygoing, fun person to be around. But he's cutthroat as a competitor. He knows what he's doing. So very, very proud of him. Yeah, I think you highlighted some of the best bracket runs, and shout out to everyone who competed. Firestar as well, who was very competitive in the Spice Bowl that Henry and I co-commentated together, and then he ended up within the top 16. Very, very impressive by him. And good run by Alpha Phoebe as well. I'm sure we'll talk more about Phoebe later on. But yeah, Adib Khan doing Adib things after we saw how good he was in Portland. So that wasn't super, super surprising to me, but I'm
You
happy
could
to see him
call it a
consistent.
deep run.
Ah, a deep run. A deep run in the tournament. Absolutely. Let us know in the YouTube comments if you got the joke. Um, let's talk about Sunday, ZZ, because honestly, of all the championship Sundays I watched, this one felt like, especially the Pato versus Elam series. My goodness, this felt like probably the most competitive, I guess, sequence of battles that we've ever had. I mean, this was absolutely insane.
Yeah, I feel like we say that after just about every IC, but like the
But
stakes for this one, like you had arguably the most successful North American trainer in Elam who just came off back-to-back championships. Then you had ItsAXN, former world champion, former IC champion, just repeated his Portland regional championship after like 1.5 years of really searching for his form, but now back to his best. And then you had Patoman, who like had the opportunity to be the first trainer to get that double IC crown in the same
mm,
season. Um, Won UIC, reached the grand finals in Sevilla, and now really back with a very spicy team, not unlike my own team, but piloted just that little bit better. And yeah, you have that continental showdown between Pato and Elam. You have essentially like this generational showdown almost with ItsAXN. I don't know, like, can you really say that he's representing the old guard? But he's like this force from 2023 re-emerging as potentially the best in the world, and coming from the loser side to take on those top competitors. And even though he was able to close it out with a clean 3-0 at the end of the day, up until then, all the series that we witnessed were so incredibly close that yeah, like if like if we had like a script writer for this tournament, this is probably the exact day 3 they would have come up with.
exactly. I saw some comments as well. The series I mentioned Elam versus Pato, that was an insane series, but the one I was like actively visualizing was actually Pato versus Axon. Uh, I saw comments on the YouTube video that went up. It's about 35 minutes long if you'd like to watch it online. I saw comments saying this was the real grand finals, right? This was the peak of the entire tournament. And for everyone that missed it, this was a sequence of games where Pato boosted on his Greninja 4 times in a row. And I think the mathematical probability of that is what, like 0.2% or something like that, 12.5% to the fourth degree. which is absolutely like unimaginable. I heard some jokes in the crowd. You'll love this, CC. You probably heard the same jokes. I heard some people saying that they need a new drop for Worlds with Potaman's Greninja that boosts on every single Night Slash.
So honestly, like I have a strong opinion on that sequence of events
Okay.
because I actually disagree with the notion that Pato got um all that lucky in day three overall. And I think I will have
Okay.
to explain that because we just went over how he night slash boosted 4 times in a row.
Yeah. What do you mean?
And which is like obviously like incredibly fortunate to have that happen to you.
Hmm.
But what I mean by that is that in the winners finals against Elam, I think Pato was like you could reasonably call him unlucky for having the game one overturn, where like not overturned,
Mm.
but essentially he started lagging with his Marowak when he was in a position where he had um, at least a decent shot at winning that game
Hmm.
because he essentially went 2.5 times strong against Elam's Diggersby in the back and probably had the energy on both his Marowak and his Azumarill to close out the game and potentially um, pull ahead 1-0 in that series. But that's not what happened because all of a sudden the mudslaps of the Marowak go into slow motion. Pato isn't getting the damage. Pato isn't getting the energy. It's an obvious rematch, but he loses that advantage. He loses that line call that he made. Elam adjusts. Elam doesn't bring the Digger Spear anymore. Instead, he
Hmm.
trusts the Golai support. And again, like this goes back to we can't ever blame a player for their actions because they have to operate within the rules. And unlike in grassroots tournaments, there is no rule that prescribes same teams for the competitors. So it
Yeah.
was it was unfortunately just the name of the game that Pato would lose his team call there and would have to essentially prepare for that game as if it was a new game one. But I would call that unlucky. And the other thing that I would call unlucky is the situation in the decisive game five in the losers finals against ItsAXN,
Hmm.
where Pato leads the
Oh
Credilli
yeah.
into the Shadow Drapion. Axon
Yeah.
pulls off a genius bait because he kind of knows that Pato is probably really into switch advantage here. He Aquatails early, meaning he gets to save a little bit of energy and still gets the shield. I think they play out the one shield scenario if I'm not mistaken. And the way this plays out is that Pato lands one Rock Tomb. Axon lands, I think, two crunches, but they're debuffed.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the matchup, the Credilli acids down the Shadow Drapion the exact same moment the Shadow Drapion poison stings down the Credilli. So it's just a flat out tie. There's no switch advantage achieved for either competitor. Both players sit there, they wait the timer, they wait the full 10 seconds, then ItsAXN presses the Lapras, whereas Pato presses nothing, but its accent actually presses too late.
Yeah.
The decision to go into his Lapras doesn't go through. Instead, his Araquanid is selected and Pato's Greninja is selected. And this seals the game because even though Pato's Manabus has decent enough matchups in the back with Accent's Lapras
Lapras.
not being on Ice Beam, it can't 1v2. It's a Pokemon that has very pitiful damage output. It like it tries its best, but at the end of the day, you just have the Araquanid on that Greninja. It is that RPS win, and it was decided by fate essentially, and it didn't go in Pato's favor, which is why I personally think that Pato actually did not get lucky that day three. His last two Night Slash boosts were inconsequential. You could argue that the second Night Slash boost, he may have won that anyway because he kind of had the decent alignment and he just needed that chip damage. And the very first Night Slash the first Night Slash boost, it did win him the game. But what I want to stress is that to be in a position when you have those two charge attacks loaded on your Scizor, and that you are in a position where you have that win condition of boosting, I think that requires really precise play to even maneuver yourself into that spot.
Hmm.
Because even though Pato had only a 1 in 8 chance of winning that game, 99% of players would have had a 0% chance at this point in time because he just played that so excellently to his 1-win condition. So
Yeah.
obviously it was a very hype. It was a fantastic series to watch as a spectator. But I do want to dispel the notion that Pato got lucky and Axton would have just wiped the floor with him if he didn't get lucky, because I do
Yeah.
not believe that's what happened. I think they were evenly matched.
So things kind of balance out, right? You have that game restart versus Axon, you lose that advantage that you secured as Pato, and then there's a rumor, right? I've tested it a few times with House Stark, but I don't know if my testing exactly holds up. But there's a rumor that if you have a simul KO, that the Pokemon Go app just selects the Pokemon on the left. I think that happens a lot of the time, but not every time. And in this case, it selected the Greninja on the left and then the Araquanid on the left for Pato and Axon, respectively. Um, yeah, I will say that the first and second boosts that Pato got, I do think that those boosts secured him those game victories, especially when he boosted right before the Lapras came back out from Axon, and then he's able to Night Slash and actually get the KO because he had to throw the energy
Like
immediately. That
the first
that was
Night
for
Slash
sure.
was 100% decisive. Like there's no
Yeah,
way the Night
yeah.
Slash KOs without that boost.
The second one, he was able to pile on a lot more damage. And I think it really helped him to close the gap. And if I remember right, he lands the Night Slash into the Lapras, and then the Lapras gets pretty weak, and then the Mandibuzz comes out basically at full health, and Axon was like,
Actually,
unable to do anything, if I'm recalling
yeah.
that correctly. But yeah, but how exciting was that in the crowd and for the commentators as well? I mean, my gosh, I listened back to it. Wholesome and Martine. Wholesome said he was gonna have a heart attack in the booth, just watching. And you could see Pato popping off on stage. He'd get the boost. He'd like look up at everyone. Everyone would cheer. And by the third one, we were like, okay, this is insane. And by the fourth one, we were like, what is happening? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when it's all
Just for
said and
like
done,
those two boosted water shurikens, but fine.
yeah,
While you're at
yeah.
it, may as well
But
boost
but
again.
by the fourth one, we were like, all right, he's gonna get it 100% of the time. So even though he's losing, it almost felt like the icing on the cake a bit. That he was getting this boost, he was getting this like surge of late game luck. But judging by the macro of the matchup, we could tell it was pretty much done. And then yeah, just so flowers to Pato, man, absolutely. But then we moved on to the grand finals, and I was talking with some friends, and I just didn't see anyone beating Elam twice. I didn't see that in the cards. It wasn't in the stars. It didn't feel like that was even a potential. But Axon did it. And he was able to win that grand finals 3-1 and then win the reset 3-0, which beating Elam 6 times is unprecedented. I don't know how many people are capable of that, but Axon's apparently one of them.
And I think this grand finals actually mirrored another one. Let me check quickly when that happened. Was it Atlanta, where
Yeah, Pocket.
Elam just masterfully utilized his Shadow Drapion to outmaneuver out of pocket,
Yep.
um, and take that championship crown? I think even though it wasn't directly comparable, one thing that we pointed out back then was how Elam was able to consistently win charge attack priority with his Shadow
Mhm.
Drapion against Pocket's Shadow Drapion.
Yep.
But Accent's Shadow Drapion is built different. And we know that Accent is very particular about his IVs that he has on his Pokemon. We
Yep.
do remember the infamous Medi Slayer Medi that took him to the 2023 World Champion title. He did
Yep.
have that Drapion Slayer Drapion that he could just send out every time, very intentionally CMP the opposing Drapion and be very sure, very certain that he would win that charge attack priority. So that was something that he was able to wager very effectively. And then I think another team building choice to be pointed out on Accent's side
Mhm.
is that while many trainers, maybe in anticipation of more jump love, maybe just like as an anti-credility tech, have opted to run Ice Beam on their Lapras. But Accent
Yep.
actually did not do that. He did opt for that Skull Bash. And what that gives you is a very dominant mirror matchup.
Yep.
And so while there was a Lapras on both sides and a Shadow Drapion on both sides, I do believe that Accent's team did have a pretty sizable advantage over Elam's team. And if you would then pair that with the pinpoint perfect execution that Accent displayed the entirety of the weekend, even for a player of Elam's caliber, that's just going to be tough to overcome.
I had a second to catch up with Rosemary before she went into the lounge. After the Go Grand Finals, there was a lounge segment with the other commentators plus Rosemary, and they just kind of recapped things that happened up on stage. And she was standing next to me while the Grand Finals were going on, and she said, "Wait, so you're telling me that Axon has multiple Shadow Drapion that are all competitively viable, and he just picked this one for the tournament for this particular reason?" And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying." Like Axon is just built different. But speaking of builds, I'm really floored at how similar the teams ended up being for our first and second place finishers. The Pokemon they shared are 5 out of 6: Dusclops, Diggersby, Dedenne, Shadow Drapion, and Lapras, with the notable difference in the moveset. And then the final picks were more similar than you'd think. They both picked a Water Bug as their sixth and final Pokemon. Axon with the bulky, slow, lumbering Araquanid, and Elam with the hyper offensive Golisopod that he used to topple Patoman's core of Greninja and Scizor just a few rounds prior. But yeah, eerily similar teams, and they're not even on the same competitive team, right? I mean, Elam
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
is
They probably
Elite
did not team
Talents.
well together, I would imagine.
Exactly, which makes it even more surprising. I was trying to Dene and Scrims. I'm going to be honest, Easy. Either you were feasting on Azu Mandibuzz, or you were absolutely decimated by Cradily and Diggersby. But if you look at these teams, there is a notable Mandibuzz weakness. I mean, you've got Pokemon like Lapras, which Mandibuzz is double resisting the Sidewaves. You've got Dusclops, which can hit with Ice Punch, but it needs 3 of them to pick up the KO. And then you've got Diggersby, which can only reach up there with puny Fire Punches, and then the Drapion, which is neutral. So you really need that Mandibuzz coverage, and I think that's the reason they both had Dedenne. So it was really cool to walk around the venue and look at the grand finals and say, "Oh yeah, Pokemon Go has a Dedenne mirror to start our grand finals. What a time to be
So,
alive!"
so one thing that I am looking for, if you see me in Anaheim at Worlds and you
Uh,
are low friendship or no friendship with me, and you have spare holiday Dedenne with that little costume, I
ah,
do want that because it's always fun to have like a little bit of a funny Pokemon, whether it's like extra extra large, extra extra small, whether it's
yeah.
shiny or whether it has a costume. If you have that with PvP IVs, that's a very fun flex to bring into battle. And for Dedenne, we actually have something that exists that looks a little goofy, looks a little funny, and may just spice up the visual experience of battling. There it
Mm.
is. There it is. Any like YouTube audience is now feasting their eyes on that very cute Dedenne. And I do not have one with PvP IVs just yet, but I am looking for one.
Mm. It's
That being said, I do agree with you that Dedenne does lend itself to RPS scenarios in a way. Um, but this is just something that always kind of happens and that sometimes needs to happen just to make it so your opponent doesn't have this one free line that can go essentially like ABA water, for example. Like we had
mhm.
metas where everybody just had that superior sitting on their bench, just trying to make sure that they're not doing the ABA water strat, but not actually coming out to actively take part in the battle. And I feel like with Dedenne, it's usually somewhat similar. That being said, with how annoying that defense buff gets very fast, I think so. When I built my team originally, um, obviously I walked us through the process already, but essentially one of the like there were two main things that I wanted to accomplish. The one thing, don't auto lose to Shadow Scissor because Shadow Scissor is like the great equalizer. Like it has so much neutral play into everything that isn't um a fire type. And okay, I did auto lose to Shadow Scissor once. But other than that, I did feel somewhat prepared. I think Ninja played a big part in protecting me from that. And the other
Yeah.
thing, don't go too weak. Like, don't let your team building be too limited by Dedenne, because that thing is just so neutrally strong while also shutting down flyer water combinations super, super hard.
Mhm.
So you will want to have a lot of neutral play into it, because otherwise you may just get your Pokemon entirely misaligned. And yeah, this is again a thing that we may want to talk about in
It
more detail a little later on.
I think people that are listening have heard me say that I competed this past weekend, but they have not heard me say anything about my run or how things went. There's a reason for that, everyone. But no, I actually went 3-2, and I'm very happy with that. But I was laughing not at you or your point. I was laughing that I made the mistake that you just said, please don't make, which is being weak to Scizor. That was, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that I made with my team composition. My personal run, I went through 9 different team drafts on Thursday alone, and then by like 3 a.m. on Thursday, ready to go to bed. Team lock in was due Friday morning, 8 a.m. I just said, you know what? I'm going to throw all this out and I'm going to play something that I want to play, that I'm comfortable playing. And I'm proud to say that I got some of the equation correct. I did play a dark type paired with Galarian Weezing, which is something that you yourself did. Only my dark type was Guzzlord, which is a
Oh,
Pokemon I
hey,
adore. I
I
play a
did
lot
try
of.
that in an initial practice. So
Yeah,
honestly, this is not that far off.
not that far off. I felt like it was fun. It crushes a lot of these matchups. If you look at the winning teams, I mean, there are 2 Pokemon that Guzzlord really fears in the Dedenne and the Water Bug type. Otherwise, Dusclops playable, Diggersby playable, Drapion playable, Lapras playable. There's utility in that Pokemon. But my final team ended up being Guzzlord with Galarian Weezing. I had Shadow Primeape, I had Lapras, Diggersby, and Gastrodon. So it definitely ended up being a bit more RPS than I initially intended, but I am proud to say that I won my first 3 rounds. Then I went up against Ashton Ash, who can fault you for losing to someone like him? He's absolutely incredible. And then my first losers round battle was against Jumothy, who I had already defeated. And Jumothy leaned into the RPS, called my lines perfectly, and executed a beautiful game or a beautiful series to win 2-0. So that was the end of my tournament run. But I learned a lot. And maybe I won't throw my team out at the last minute, but for everyone listening, you can probably tell. Yeah, I've got a bit of a Scizor issue with my team and a bit of a Dedenne issue because it's really tough when I come up against Dedenne plus Scizor because then I have to straddle both matchups, and there's only a couple Pokemon that can do that really successfully. So it really limits your team. And I think that's an important part to consider, at least for me going forward. I want to compete some more next season, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that because if we see one previous world champion excel and take tournament titles, why couldn't another one do it?
Well, I will say I did feel a lot closer to the meta after scrimming, after doing the practice tournaments, after team building over and over again. I felt a lot more in tune with how things actually go in terms of matchups and things like that. And that's definitely something I want to bring into the Worlds Cast coming up in Anaheim. The announcement's already on the website, so I can officially say I'll be one of your commentators for the World Championships. And I'm very, very honored to do it yet again. And my goal is to deliver the best show. And I think that scrimming, being close to the competitive scene, knowing the matchups is going to be really important to casting the best I can possibly cast. So definitely going to do that, and then we'll see what the 2026 season holds.
I'm looking forward to it,
Yeah,
100%.
we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we can share the stage some point. I won't just be watching from the sidelines. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Um, so we've covered a lot. We covered the meta. We covered some of the bracket surprises, some of the bracket upsets. We've covered the grand finals. Championship Sunday was incredible. I just want to highlight one more time Potoman's run and how incredible it was. In day one, he defeated Jet Force Gemini. He 2-0'd K-Pine, who was tied for 13th in Atlanta earlier this season. He 2-0'd Mango, who was 9th at NAIC last year. Very, very talented player. He 2-1 Sustenance Eater, who made top 10 2 times this season. Then day two, he brought down yours truly and Zzweilous. He 2-1 Twastel. He 2-1 Richie, 1409. And then his 2 losses were by 1 game each to Elam and Axon. So you could argue, and this is totally a valid point, you could argue that Potoman was 2 games away from winning it all at NAIC. If he just wins those game fives, he is your NAIC champion, the first trainer ever to win 2 ICs in the same season. That close, inches away. So I hope that he takes that and he builds on it, and he looks at it as a positive and not as a missed opportunity, because it's absolutely a very positive thing to consider.
I also think that this tournament essentially cemented who we are looking at as our front runners for the World Championship. We will have, and this is true, this is not just me over promising again, but we will have a Worlds preview episode. This is a
Yeah,
guarantee. I
let's
promise
go.
it. Um, but yeah, if we just look at, okay, who do we like? Who is front of mind if we consider potential world champions? I think this top three would probably like maybe alongside Mato, who had
Mhm.
like a last minute
Pivot.
change of plans because there were like visa issues after he was originally supposed to be on the casting team.
Yep.
And then when that didn't come to fruition, he instead opted to go on a little run of his own as a competitor. But there was
Mhm.
very little prep time and it didn't go really his way. But that doesn't take away from him being the LAIC champion and also a 3 times regional champion on top of that just this season. So like he's definitely a top contender. But then like what Elam, Axton, and Patu did over those last couple months, especially, it's honestly like you have top competitors, and then you have a few people that just feel even one step ahead of the rest. And I feel like those three are definitely to be considered as such. And yeah, it's definitely it will be maybe a little bit of pressure going into Worlds because
Mhm.
now the target is on your back. You can't really go into it the way maybe like Yakai did last year, where okay, the
Mhm.
last known result was an 0-2 at the previous World Championship, and nobody knows that you're secretly the most cracked player on the planet currently. This is very much known about Pato, about Elam, about Axon.
Yep.
The betas are very much out there. Everybody watch them, I suppose. So yeah, there's definitely there's like positives and negatives about being so successful, but yeah, I would not be surprised if we were to recruit our future world champion from that day three NAIC crowd.
There's a post that Axon made, and as you said, going into the next World Championships, these players have a lot of eyes on them. A lot of people are going to expect them to perform. But there's a post he made I found really interesting. He shared the Dracoviz recap graphic of his season. I shared this on the 17th, which was 3 days ago, as time of recording. But would you believe that Axon actually had 4 tournament appearances in a row, where the most rounds that he won was 4? He went 2-2 in Sacramento, 1-2 at EUIC, 4-2 in Vancouver, and then 3-2 in Atlanta. And then you look at Portland and you look at NAIC, 7-0, 16-5 in games played. NAIC was 11-1, 26-7 in games played. His post says, "This season was weird. Got off to a great start, but man, I struggled through the middle. With all that said, I've never ended off a season this strong. I changed my tournament mentality before Portland, and it was a huge help. Now onto Worlds. I don't know what changed, and I kind of want to ask him, but at the same time, if you're a player like Axon and you are this hot, basically red hot, and you're going into Worlds, why not just keep that up your sleeve,
Yeah.
lock into Worlds, and we'll talk after Worlds? Maybe that's the best
It's
strat, right?
also like this is like again like a little bit of a Wolfglick VGC comparison, but everybody
Uh-huh.
was so in awe of his victory speech at UIC and what kind of like um big moment he created for himself. But Axon honestly did the same, where he went on about how he repeated his Portland victory, how he repeated his NAIC victory, and how
Yeah.
there is one more achievement that needs to be repeated, which is obviously the World Championship.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, being able to say that, I think Gen Z would call that infinite aura. So yeah, we definitely know what we're up against, and just being able to just casually say that, oh yeah, like I had like a little bit of a rough middle of the season, but then I just flipped the switch and I won everything. Just like
Yeah.
I'm used to doing. So this is like honestly like really impressive, and let's keep it a mystery for now. We can still ask him after
Yeah.
Anaheim what he changed exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely back, very much so.
Master Axon is back, and I'm waiting for the victory speech where he says, "And it wasn't enough," and absolutely just the whole crowd just goes crazy. Maybe we'll get
uh,
one of those speeches out of Axon, but who knows? He's very measured, very polite,
yes.
we'll see if the emotion overcomes him at 2 p.m. on a Sunday when he wins it all. We'll see. We'll
I
see.
also always enjoy just how well spoken he is. I feel like that's
Yeah.
also a takeaway from the victory speech. And I think
Yeah.
I did note that after Portland as well. So
Hmm.
again, like I'm very happy for him that his competitor arc made this little upswing just when it mattered the most. But I would also be very curious to see Master Axon become Caster Axon next season because he definitely has
Oh,
both the knowledge and just a way with words that I could
yeah.
really see behind the caster's desk as well, without wanting to take anyone's job. But I think he's somebody who should consider that if at all of interest to him.
I'm just going to be honest. When Axon streams and he actively talks through his battles, his decision making, the plays he's about to make, the plays he expects his opponent to make in real time, I don't know if there's a better Pokemon Go streamer right now that actively narrates everything that's going on in their mind and on the field at the same time than Axon. So yeah, I think there's a spot for him if he ever decides to come to the commentating desk. I think everyone would absolutely love to have his insights. Because again, like in pro football, right? That's like having Tom Brady in the casting booth, or having, even like a Tony Romo who just knows what's going to happen before it happens. That's like having someone like that. So, yeah, I could definitely see him doing it. But Axon was incredible. No controversy there. I don't think anyone doubts that Master Axon is back, and we'll see what he does at Worlds. But honestly, it's easy. All I have left on my list of topics is controversy. But if there's anything else that you want to talk about for NAIC, I'm down to discuss.
Yeah, let me look over my notes as well. There's like some niche statistics where
Sure.
oh, there have been like four back-to-back champions this season, if I've been counting correctly. But I feel like Elam, Korlash, nickname, and its accent managed to compete in back-to-back events and just take it all every time. So I don't know whether this like it's becoming a thing, but that those hot streaks definitely exist.
Yep.
And yeah, it's Axon, one of I think four names. I may have missed somebody, but I hope I didn't. If I did miss one of those back to back victories, please write it in the comments. Shameless engagement bait. But yeah, other than that, we can move to the a little more controversial issues. Even though I do want to preface this with how I am not intending to be in any way, shape, or form drama farming with this, or just like I
Yeah.
just feel as if there were things that came up during NAIC or in the aftermath of NAIC that are worth talking about, just as far as they relate to a broader um, point that could be made about competing in a setting like this.
So to ZZ's point, I agree with him. I think other shows cover drama quite well, and that's not what we set out to do. But I will say, behind the scenes, I'm probably pushing ZZ a little bit more to talk about this kind of stuff. It might be like a 60-40 relationship, 65-35, whatever you want to call it. But I have thoughts on these things. So I think it's worth discussing, especially when it comes to larger rule changes to the game. So why don't we start with the controversial round one, day two matchup, Alpha Phoebe versus RGR. If you want to find the link to this, this is about 3 hours and 8 minutes into the day two stream. Alpha Phoebe takes the stage against a young, very talented player from Europe. And it comes down to a pivotal moment where Alpha Phoebe has a Pokemon on the field. I believe it's Diggersby, and he's got his Blastoise in the back. And then his opponent, RGR, has a Shadow Drapion with two Aqua Tails. And just to paint the scene, you can tell that Phoebe is a little bit disoriented, doesn't know exactly how much energy is on his opponent. He made a post about this, and we'll talk about that soon. But he basically said that like late game energy awareness was something that he noticed he's not very good at, or maybe he wants to work on. And I think we can all work on that just a little bit more because it's very, very difficult. But he looks up across the table, kind of just like a reflex, and he says, "Do you have two?" Right. And he's talking, of course, about the Aquatails. And even without getting the audio feed, you can read the lips. You can see exactly what he asked him. And RGR kind of hesitates for a moment and then says, "Yeah, I've got two." Um, this has been very controversial because a lot of people are saying that Fee basically got information out of his opponent that was related to a win condition at a pivotal moment in the game when it was inappropriate to do so. And I talked with Martine briefly about this. I talked with a few other people about this. The problem for me is that some people are saying that we need to develop a new rule where players cannot ask leading questions to each other about win conditions. I believe someone online posted that we should just mute the player mics during the battles and then turn them back on when the battles are over so they can discuss. And then I've heard other people say that we just need to just change the whole system and how this works, and that Phoebe was being unsportsmanlike to do this. I have thoughts on this, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you think first.
Okay. I'm very curious about your thoughts on the meta now, but
Yeah.
I can give mine as well. So, one thing that I think is somewhat important is that just by the way Phoebe reacts to how the information he gets out of his opponent enables him to make the catch and win the game. Like he immediately in the moment he doesn't feel comfortable with it. Like he doesn't really express any joy after taking the series, and I think he feels a little bit guilty about what he has been doing, which probably was just like very instinctive, not really thought through as much, even in that moment. So I don't really want to paint him as somebody who willingly like exploited a loophole in the rules to um, gain an advantage over his opponent. Um, but still, I am not a fan of asking leading questions, of um, interacting with your opponent in a way that there may not be a mutual basis for. I'm not a big fan of the idea of just cutting off the mics during the battle because occasionally there's interesting or fun or joyful moments that arise from having those mics open, and we do get glimpses into those on some regional broadcasts as well. So I feel as if um, there's not really a need to just be overly cautious about this, but I still feel as if even if not as a dedicated rule, there should still be um, just like a voluntary agreement, like a gentleman's agreement between competitors to not try and poke for something like this, which is like, I think you can disagree on that. I think other games do disagree on that. I saw Jason GBL Legend make points about that on the platform that used to be Twitter, where he essentially raised the point that this is just part of the mental game, and other games may be treating this entirely different, are not seeing a scandal in this, and instead think that, okay, like this is a very valid game, valid way of just playing your cards by luring your opponent into a trap like that, because nobody forced RGR to give up that information, even though it is actually prohibited by the rules of Play Pokemon to lie to your opponent. So how that would have played out is a whole different conversation that I don't even know that I want to get into. Like you're probably like allowed to say nothing, but you're not allowed to say, "Oh, I'm one off" when you're not one off.
Can you say I don't
Um,
know?
you could probably say I don't know because who can prove that you can read? So
Or maybe you just
so
forgot.
like
I don't know.
like there's definitely some liberties that you can take, but this situation was one where on the one side you had somebody who was like an official caster for the game, a very seasoned competitor, whereas their opponent was somebody they probably don't talk too much in private, who's um a little on the younger side. I don't think they were like a kid, but certainly
Hmm.
newer to the scene. Um and it was like a high stakes situation. So if this is like your first day too, it's an international, you get nervous, you can easily make mistakes. And if you are somebody who um maybe not the like may not be the cutthroat competitor first and foremost, um I do believe it's like a bad look at least to put your opponent in a position like this if there is an observable power dynamic in your favor. And yeah, I
Mm.
wasn't a fan of the scene. But I don't think there should be massive rule changes undertaken to prevent it in the future.
The problem for me is that it's such a gray area. And the example that I come back to was Inadequance versus Arceus Aurelius at EUIC. That was such an entertaining match to watch. And a huge part of that was because they were talking to each other the whole time. And I, of course, didn't hear the entire conversation. But if at any point in that battle, Arceus Aurelius says, "Oh, this is a brave bird, you better shield," or Inadequate says, "Oh, I'm baiting, whatever. I'm baiting Octazooka. You should no shield." Then wouldn't that fall into the same category of people that are asking leading questions or trying to influence their bonus decisions, et cetera, et cetera?
This would be
But
potentially lying to an opponent unless you're
yeah,
like being truthful about it.
but then it comes
Which
down
like why
to
would you give your opponent that information?
exactly, and it comes down to, oh, well, they're friends, so it's okay. Well, who's to say that Phoebe and RGR don't go way back? That they're best friends and just nobody knows, right? And where's the line that you draw with that? It just doesn't make any sense. So that's the first thing, is that it's a very gray area and it's very difficult to determine. Oh, if you really are friends, show us your Discord DMs. Like where do you get evidence? Where do you find that
Yeah.
out? And where do you draw the line? The second point was actually related to the moment itself. In that moment, I still believe that there's a branching decision tree and either path could have been taken. As soon as RGR confirms that he's got two Aquatails, that informs Phoebe that he's then able to maybe catch the second one, right? That's now an opportunity or even a necessity to win the game. But now that RGR has informed his opponent of that, doesn't it further inform RGR that Phoebe will try to catch? Whereas previously, maybe he didn't expect to try to catch because he didn't know that there were two moves ready. And he would have just left the Pokemon in. So now RGR is working with the information that my opponent's probably going to try to catch the back to back. So I should throw one and then do a fast move just to make sure my opponent tries or doesn't try to catch the second one. You
This
know, it
is
it, it
probably
goes
true.
it goes both
Like
ways.
just like talking to somebody doesn't really absolve either party of the decisions in the end game that they did make. Um, I guess like Phoebe admitted in his Twitter post to having lost count in that situation, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore, like, it was essentially like, oh, he was never going to catch there because he thought he was like 2 to 3 poison stings off. To, okay, this is now a 50-50. Does he like do another poison sting because he expects me to catch?
Yep.
Or does he just throw the move? So it definitely narrows down the decisions, the win conditions that could have been undertaken there. Which is why I still believe that there was an advantage achieved through that exchange. um, but yeah, again,
That's
it's like
fair.
very difficult to really draw the line to, okay, like, is that like illegal? Is it just frowned upon? And or is it like entirely legitimate to try and gather any type of information you can in that situation? Like there's
Yeah.
players who um try to, like, if they can win a game, um they try to, if they can win a game with only two Pokemon, and it would be a lot more comfortable if they used their third Pokemon. They still keep the third Pokemon secret to keep that information hidden from their opponent. And the same way, if you are losing a matchup, you should still strive to at least get to that last Pokemon on your opponent's side to just have that info ready to go into the next game. So the information game is kind of always actively played. Now the
Yep.
question is it like, should it be played outside of the input that you give into your game? And is like all of the stage actually a battle stage? um and I don't think we have like a definition for that.
No, we don't. I'll take it one step further, right? What if there's a situation where a clarifying sportsman-like question is asked and that leads to a additional win condition or informs a later win condition? What I mean is, let's say an example where we saw Axon versus Pato, and I believe it was Drapion on one side and then Pato's Mandibuzz on the other side. Pato asks Axon if he's missing poison stings, right? Because there's some lag on stage, things were not going right. I believe they ended up restarting that match. But
Yeah.
just bear with me. Let's say that there is a matchup very similar to that, and there's a visual glitch or there's a visual stutter lag, and then you ask your opponent, "Hey, are you missing any poison stings?" And then they say no, right? And you're like, okay, well, now I know exactly how much energy they have in spite of the visual lag. That might have been a detriment to both of us. Now I've clarified it and they've clarified it on their side as well. So then that later informs, oh, they have the energy for the move, and then I know what to do next. So again, like it's a sportsman-like question that you can ask, like, hey, are you missing moves? Hey, did that work properly? Blah blah. But it also informs your decision tree moving forward.
Yeah.
So again, there's like a ripple effect, and this was like the most obvious example because it's right at the end of the game. There's only basically one win condition for each player, and this was the pivotal moment. But does it make it less of an issue if that win condition is explored early on in the battle versus later?
Yeah. Again, like you're asking good questions that I don't really have an immediate answer to.
Yeah, I want
It's
everyone in the comments
it's
to
the
answer it.
grayest of gray areas at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, where does this leave us? Probably at a point of nothing changes and everybody should just try to be conscious of being sportsmanlike
Yeah.
when interacting with their opponent.
Yeah.
And yeah, we talked about this a little bit before the recording started as well, that
Mhm.
there may be different standards to which one can be held depending on what game one is playing, where there's like other proper esports where it's more openly adversarial, like if not outright hostile, then at least um, like you know that okay, this is like high stakes competitive situation and you need to get every advantage that you can. Whereas in Pokemon, I feel like a lot of it is still very community centric. Like obviously everybody wants to be the champion, but you also want to be able to shake hands after the battle, and you should always act accordingly.
Yeah. I think back to other esports, and I actually did a little bit of research before we went on to the recording. I was looking at other 1v1 esports, primarily fighting games, like whether it's Tekken, Street Fighter, Smash Brothers, but also shooter games I just had it Quake. Like Quake is a 1v1 that is still a pretty big esport these days. Um, a lot of the times these players are literally sitting next to each other, especially in the fighting games. They are shoulder to shoulder. There's not even a stage to separate them. They're literally chairs parallel to each other looking at the screen. And I feel like there's so many opportunities there to mouth off, to say things. Of course, you're not supposed to like physically touch your opponent in those situations, which I think makes a lot of sense because that would just lead to fights basically every time. But I find it hard to believe that these players are not talking to each other. They're not saying things. They're not getting inside each other's heads. If you watch like competitive Madden, for example, these players are literally talking trash in real time. When they make a big play, they are literally saying derogatory things to their opponent within reason, right? Not no curse words or slurs, but still like putting them down. Um, and Pokemon is just such a family friendly brand that it, like you alluded to, it doesn't feel like there's much room for that kind of animosity between the players. But then you look at other esports titles like competitive Halo. One of the players is very famous for this. He goes by the name Boo Boo Doo, and Boo Boo Doo had a moment where his team beat another team, and he literally reached across the stage with his hand out, like Emperor Pal or like Darth Vader force choke, and he like choked his opponents because they lost like a really pivotal game. It's like,
Oh
you're choking on
man.
the spot, and we'll never see that in Pokemon, right? They will never allow
Yeah.
that kind of stuff to happen. But still, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that Phoebe's um, decision was particularly antagonistic. I don't think it was predatory. And like you said, and he said in his post, immediately when he asked the question, he recognized he probably should not have done that. So I don't know, everybody. I I feel bad for RGR if he thinks that influenced the outcome of the game, but I hope people don't go after Phoebe because I think he was just doing what he thought was right, and when it wasn't right, he recognized it almost immediately. So, I, like you said, things might just stay the same.
Yeah, I feel like that's the most likely outcome for sure.
Yeah. Well, there was another controversy this past weekend, but again, we're not a drama farming podcast, and I can tell by my co-host demeanor, we probably don't want to get too far into the weeds. We can just keep that between us. I'll just say. no matter how tired you are, no matter how exhausted you are, how much you've traveled, please treat your opponents with respect. Shake their hands, say GG's. Don't leave the table before things are finalized. It's just the bare minimum that you can do, no matter who you are playing. And I think it's fair if we just leave it at that. I think that's a good universal rule across the board. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do tend to agree.
Yeah. So next time you beat me, ZZ, I'm throwing the phone on the ground and I'm canceling the podcast with you, and I'm just gonna scream and run out of there. Okay, that's what's gonna
Let's
happen.
really do that because that would be such good content, such good marketing. Like, oh man,
Yeah, imagine the drama,
our listens would triple.
and then someone is conveniently like filming it off to the side, and that wasn't like planned at all, but they capture everything. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. But yeah, CZ, NAIC was an incredible experience. I know we say that about a lot of these tournaments, but it really was awesome. I spent a lot more time with the community than I'm usually able to do, just because with the cast and everything, it's a full day's work, and you give a lot to the camera, to your co-host, to the production behind the scenes. And when you're not in the booth, you're backstage researching, you're looking up player metrics, you're watching the battles, trying to stay informed, doing interviews. It's constant. So for me, as I get a little bit older, it's tougher for me to actually have the energy to go out and do everything as well. So I'm grateful that everyone invited me to dinner, that we hung out, we had a good time. You and I actually took pictures together for the first time, which is awesome, and I'm happy with that. And yeah, I think I had a wonderful time, and New Orleans was great.
Yeah, I always love to visit that very unique city. I don't think it's confirmed yet whether NAIC is going to return to New Orleans next year, but
Mm-hmm.
judging by what went on last year, we may just be like a week away from 2026 season news. And obviously, as soon as that drops, we are going to cover that on the podcast as well.
I saw one post that somebody made. I wish I could find it, but it was like
Oh, was
a
it?
leak of the schedule. Did you see it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love
It
that we
was
are going to have a regional in Horse. Horse is a pretty good place to have a regional in.
One was a subway, like a random, not like an underground subway, but like the restaurant, the sandwich restaurant,
Yes.
a random subway. I think another one was like Hoth or something from Star Wars. Like that was
Oh
great.
man.
And then there was a Bourbon Street regional the week before New Orleans. So that was maybe a little oversight, but that was also entertaining.
Uh,
If I find the post, I'll put it up on the YouTube version. That was really funny.
nice.
But
Excellent. Yeah,
but yeah, my
like
friend.
Horse definitely on my wish list for next season.
I'm actually looking it up right now to see if I can find it, because that was honestly super funny, and I hope it gets a lot of likes because it was really good. I'm not finding it immediately, so I'll just try to search it up and put it in the show in post. But for now, ZZ, I think that's it. If there's anything you want to add, or if you just want to have a wonderful night and then plan our future episodes, what do you say?
So yeah, I think my parting words are going to be please enjoy whatever broadcast we're going to have of the PJCS, the Japanese qualifiers that are going to happen this weekend. I don't know when this episode is going to be uploaded. You may be listening to this after the tournament already concluded, but if we are fast, it may come out early. So let's hope for that. Always going to be a fun time to see what the Japanese community is cooking up. We know it's going to be
Mhm.
close team sheets, which is a little bit of a change of pace. We may see the odd surprise move on some of the Pokemon. So that is going to be fun. And also this weekend we have the Jangmo-O Community Day,
Mm.
um, which is going to introduce the Clanging Scales charge attack for Como-O, the final evolution of that line, which is supposedly a 120 power move that decreases defense by one stage. And you can think of that as dragon type close combat with um, a little bit of extra power behind it, and
Ooh.
also a slightly less impactful defense debuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, that is going to be fun to pick up. Will it propel Como-O to immediate meta relevancy? I don't believe so. I think it's still too slow. It may be too defensively vulnerable, but once you hit one of those moves, it's going to be damage like you've never seen before, most likely. So definitely
Yeah.
make sure to pick one up. It's a gorgeous shiny as well. So fun
Yeah.
community day to play.
You had me at dragon type close combat. That honestly sounds so badass. That's like Dragon Force, you know, there's like a metal guitar in the background when the clanging scales comes through and it just annihilates everything. I'm excited for that. But I agree. I think the pacing will hurt it a little bit. Maybe one day though, we'll have a Pokemon, or we'll have an update to the Pokemon where it's able to get to that move a little bit faster. Yeah, we'll definitely have this up before PJCS. I think that Not Rob May is also hosting a bit of a watch party for that, and Inadequates might be working on something as well. So definitely stay tuned. Subscribe to both of those incredible streamers if you haven't already. And yeah, after PJCS, I guess we'll recap that. Then we'll have a little break, and then we'll get to some special episodes in the lead up to Worlds, because July and August, that's about 6 weeks of no tournaments, which is the longest stretch that we're going to get in a year. So we might as well do some fun things. But yeah, I'm excited, my friend. Thank you so much for listening to the events. And there are no further updates to when you can earn championship points because the window has closed. Leaderboards are finalized. The PJCS is still going on, but that is only for TPCI, or excuse me, TPC region players. So I really hope, ZZ, that those players that win that tournament or that are in the top four or whatever it might be, I hope they can get to the US in time for Anaheim. But they've only got like 5 or 6 weeks to get a visa, which is crunch time, absolute
Yeah,
crunch time.
it's
I hope
really
that
cutting it
happens.
close, but yeah, we definitely need that representation at Worlds because
Yeah.
again, like we always go back to last year where we had an APAC player win it all and another one placing top four, and yeah, the strength and the strength on like in Japan, like in like essentially all of Asia, like
Yeah.
if you look at VG, for example, like at NAIC, there were more Japanese players in top eight than Americans, which is not difficult to achieve because there were zero Americans in top eight. Um, but yeah, like
But
definitely
still.
speaks to the international strength of the Pokemon community, and especially in the motherland of Pokemon. Definitely are looking forward to a great competition.
Yeah. I still remember Worlds 2022 with Crescent Angels just catching every charge attack, and catching that resisted damage wherever he could. I
Yay!
honestly, like,
Back
stars in
before
my
counting
eyes.
moves was a thing. That was impressive.
Yeah.
Really ahead of his time.
And then the goat Ishikawa boy wearing his sunshades on stage in Yokohama. Oh my gosh. I really hope that our talented players from Asia can join the World Championships this year. But ZZ, it's been a good one. Great to talk with you about all things NAIC, recapping the meta, recapping some surprising bracket runs, the grand finals, talking about a little controversy, and also talking about accessibility and where we have room to improve as a game, as a platform, and as a competitive circuit. So we covered a lot of ground. We're almost to 2 hours. I would just keep on vamping for 2.5 minutes to hit that nice round 2-0, but I think that we're going to cut it here. So cheers, my
Yes.
friend. Enjoy your most recent addition to your trophy cabinet. Seriously, look up the cabinets. You can get nice ones with LED lights and you can just display them, get a little dust, a
Yeah, like
feather
at this point, I
duster.
probably should. I probably
Yeah,
should.
I think it's worth the investment. I don't see you slowing down anytime soon. So we'll see what happens. But all right, my friend, it's been good. It's been a pleasure. Let's do a recap of PJCS and then figure out what we can do after that. And I'll see you very soon.